Hello, everyone. Welcome to Stories for Sleep, where the most magical tales whisk you away into peaceful dreams. Are you ready to unwind and let your imagination soar? Tonight's story will take you on a journey like no other, filled with mystery, adventure, and serenity. So, make sure you're cozy and comfortable, and let the sweetest sleep help you drift off into the sweetest slumber. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to keep the dream world coming. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an enchanting story. It was a cold and misty evening when Evelyn arrived in the small village of Blackthorn. The villagers whispered about the manor on the hill, warning her not to go near it. They said strange things happened there, especially at night. But Evelyn, an adventurous young woman, was too curious to resist. She had heard of the mysterious mirror hidden inside the manor, said to hold great secrets. Her heart raced with excitement and fear as she decided to explore the manor herself. As she approached the towering gates, the wind howled and the trees seemed to whisper her name. The manor looked abandoned, its windows dark and broken. A heavy silence surrounded it, broken only by the creak of the gate as she pushed it open. Inside, the air felt colder and shadows seemed to move along the walls. Evelyn took a deep breath, determined to uncover the secrets of the enchanted mirror, unaware of the danger waiting for her. Evelyn stepped into the grand but decaying hallway of the manor. Dust covered the floors and cobwebs hung from the high ceilings. The faint scent of something metallic lingered in the air. As she moved deeper into the house, she noticed old paintings staring down at her, their eyes seeming almost alive. Her flashlight flickered, and for a moment she thought she saw a shadow dart across the corridor. "It's just my imagination," she whispered to herself, though her hands trembled. In one room, she found a grand mirror covered by a heavy black cloth. Her heart pounded as she pulled the cloth away. The mirror's surface gleamed unnaturally, reflecting not just her image but something else. An unfamiliar shadow standing behind her. She spun around, but no one was there. Her instincts told her to leave, but her curiosity kept her rooted to the spot. She reached out to touch the mirror, and the glass rippled like water. Evelyn froze as the mirror's surface rippled like a quiet lake. A faint voice echoed from within, soft but chilling. "Why have you come here?" it asked. She stepped back, her heart racing. "Who are you?" she whispered, her voice shaking. She listened. The mirror didn't answer right away, but the reflection of the room began to change. It showed a version of the manor filled with light, laughter, and people. The voice returned, sad but sharp. "I was trapped here long ago, and now you've awakened me." Evelyn felt her knees weaken as she realized the figure in the mirror wasn't her reflection anymore. It was someone else, a woman with pale skin and sorrowful eyes. "Help me escape," the voice pleaded, but Evelyn wasn't sure if she should trust it. The air in the room grew heavier, and the temperature dropped. Evelyn stepped away from the mirror, but the figure's voice followed her. "Don't leave me here!" it cried. She felt a strange pull toward the mirror, as though it wanted to draw her in. She turned and ran down the hallway, her flashlight flickering with every step. The shadows along the walls seemed to grow, stretching toward her like grasping hands. Evelyn heard faint footsteps behind her, though she knew she was alone. "It's the mirror. It's doing this," she thought. She stopped to catch her breath, only to see a door she hadn't noticed before. It was slightly ajar, and a dim golden light spilled out. Something told her the answer she sought lay inside, but so did something far more dangerous. Evelyn pushed the door open and stepped into the glowing room. It was filled with objects that looked centuries old: dusty books, cracked teacups, and faded photographs. Each item seemed to tell a story, but what caught her attention was a small journal lying on a table. She opened it and began to read. It belonged to a woman named Ilara, who had once lived in the manor. Ilara's final entry described a mirror that granted wishes but trapped the soul of anyone who dared to use it. Evelyn's hands trembled as she read the last line: "Beware of the shadows it brings. They will never let you leave." A loud crash from the hallway made her drop the journal. She turned to see the shadows creeping closer, their shapes now almost human. Evelyn ran back toward the mirror, clutching the journal. She needed to know the full story. But the figure in the mirror was no longer calm. It banged on the glass, screaming, "Set me free!" Evelyn hesitated, her instincts screaming at her to leave, but the figure's desperate eyes held her in place. She touched the surface of the mirror and it rippled again. This time, the room around her changed. She was no longer in the dusty manor, but in a bright golden space. The figure in the mirror stood before her, smiling. "Thank you," it said softly. But Evelyn felt uneasy. Suddenly, the golden space began to crack like glass, and Evelyn realized she wasn't free, she was trapped. The figure began to laugh, its voice echoing in her ears. Evelyn now found herself inside the mirror, looking out into the real world. The manor was dark again, and the figure that had replaced her was walking away with her flashlight. She screamed, but no sound came out. The mirror seemed to drain her energy, leaving her weak and hopeless. Outside, the figure began to mimic her life, but with a sinister twist. Evelyn watched helplessly as it moved through the manor, its smile never fading. She tried to pound on the glass, but it was no use. She was just another soul trapped in the cursed mirror, powerless to escape. Inside the mirror, Evelyn discovered she wasn't alone. Other trapped souls floated around her, their faces blank and lifeless. One of them whispered to her, "The mirror feeds on us. It grows stronger with every soul it takes." Evelyn realized that the shadows she had seen were these trapped souls, desperately trying to warn her. She felt a surge of determination. "There must be a way out," she thought. She began to study the golden cracks in the mirror, hoping to find a weakness. But every time she touched the glass, it burned her fingers. The other souls warned her that escape came at a cost. "You must destroy the mirror," one whispered, "but doing so will trap us all forever." Evelyn faced the hardest decision of her life. If she destroyed the mirror, she would never escape, but she would save others from falling into the same trap. Her heart ached as she thought of the life she would leave behind. The mirror began to hum, sensing her hesitation. Summoning all her courage, Evelyn struck the glass with a shard she found within the mirror's world. The glass splintered and shattered, releasing a blinding light. Evelyn felt herself fading, her body dissolving into the light. As the mirror crumbled, the manor shook violently, and the shadows disappeared. Evelyn's sacrifice ended the curse, but she was never seen again. With the mirror shattered, the manor fell silent. The once ominous shadows had vanished, and the air felt lighter. The villagers, sensing something had changed, ventured closer to the hill for the first time in years. Late one night, a young boy named Oliver found one of the mirror's fragments near the edge of the forest. Its surface was smooth and cool, and it seemed to call to him. Curious, he took it home, hiding it under his bed. That night, strange whispers filled his dreams. He saw images of Evelyn trapped in a golden void, her voice pleading for help. The fragment began to glow faintly, casting eerie shadows in his room. Oliver woke up in a cold sweat, feeling as though someone was watching him. They saw the crumbling remains of the mirror scattered across the floor, its shards glimmering faintly in the dim light. Among the shards they found Evelyn's journal, left behind as a testament to her bravery. Though she was gone, her sacrifice had freed the trapped souls. The villagers whispered prayers of gratitude, vowing to keep the manor's secrets hidden forever. But as they turned to leave, one of the smaller mirror fragments began to shimmer faintly, as if holding on to something. He wanted to throw the shard away, but something inside him told him it wasn't just a piece of glass. It held the key to freeing Evelyn Oliver. Determined to help Evelyn, returned to the manor the next day. The villagers warned him not to go, but he couldn't ignore the cries for help he had heard in his dreams. Armed with the shard and a lantern, he stepped into the ruined manor. The air felt heavy, and a faint humming sound came from deep within the house. As he explored, he found a hidden staircase leading to a basement he hadn't seen before. The shard in his hand began to vibrate, guiding him like a compass. The deeper he went, the darker and colder it became. At the bottom of the stairs, he found a door etched with strange symbols. He knew this was where Evelyn's spirit was trapped, but opening it would come at a cost. Oliver pushed the door open, and a blinding light filled the room. Inside, he saw Evelyn suspended in the golden void, her form faint and flickering. She looked at him with hope and fear in her eyes. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered. "The mirror's curse still lingers here. It will try to trap you too." But Oliver refused to leave. He held up the shard and it began to glow brighter. The golden void trembled and Evelyn's form became clearer. "You have to break the curse completely," she said, "but it will take all your strength." The walls of the room began to shift, and shadowy figures emerged, trying to stop him. Oliver gripped the shard tightly and pointed it toward the golden void. It emitted a beam of light that cut through the shadows, forcing them back. Evelyn screamed, not in fear but in pain, as the golden prison began to crack. "Don't stop," she urged, even as the room shook violently. The shard grew hotter in his hand, burning his skin, but he didn't let go. Finally, with one last surge of energy, the void shattered, releasing Evelyn. But Pannon, the light faded, and the room returned to darkness. Evelyn collapsed to the ground, weak but free. Oliver helped her to her feet, but the shard in his hand had turned to ash. "The curse is broken," Evelyn said softly, but Oliver knew their journey wasn't over yet. As Evelyn and Oliver emerged from the manor, the morning sun bathed the hill in warm light. The villagers, seeing Evelyn alive, gathered around in awe. She explained how Oliver's courage had saved her and destroyed the last remnants of the cursed mirror. For the first time in years, the manor felt peaceful, as though its dark history had finally come to an end. Evelyn knew she couldn't stay. She had been gone for too long, and her place in the world no longer felt the same. "Thank you," she said to Oliver, her voice full of gratitude. "You've given me a second chance." With that, she walked into the forest, her figure fading into the morning mist. Oliver watched her go, clutching the memories of their adventure, though the mirror was gone. The lessons it left behind would never be forgotten. Weeks passed, But Oliver couldn't forget Evelyn or the strange events at Blackthorn Manor. One evening, as he walked near the forest, he heard faint whispers carried by the wind. The voice was soft, almost familiar. "Oliver," it called, urging him to follow. He hesitated but felt drawn to the sound. Just as he had been to the shard deeper into the woods, he found a circle of ancient stones glowing faintly. In the center, a pool of crystal clear water shimmered under the moonlight. The whispers grew louder, and he saw Evelyn's reflection in the pool. "Oliver," she said, her voice filled with urgency, "the mirror's power isn't fully gone. Something else stirs within the manor." Oliver couldn't believe what he was hearing. "But we destroyed the mirror," he protested. Evelyn's reflection flickered as she nodded. "You did, but its roots run deep. Something ancient lies beneath the manor, feeding off the mirror's curse." She pointed toward the ruins, her reflection fading as the pool returned to stillness. Determined to uncover the truth, Oliver returned to the manor the next morning. This time, the air was colder, and a sense of unease crept over him. As he stepped inside, the shadows seemed alive, shifting and whispering. The faint hum he had heard in the basement before was now a deep, resonating pulse, echoing through the walls. Following the sound, Oliver discovered another hidden door behind a crumbling bookshelf. It led to a narrow tunnel, its walls carved with strange symbols. He ventured further, clutching a lantern to light his way. The pulse grew louder, almost like a heartbeat, guiding him toward something ancient and powerful. At the end of the tunnel, he found a chamber filled with swirling mist. In the center stood a black, pulsating stone, its surface cracked and glowing faintly. This was the heart of the curse, the source of the mirror's dark power. As Oliver approached, the mist took shape, forming ghostly figures that reached out to him. The ghostly figures surrounded Oliver, their whispers echoing in his ears. "Turn back," they warned, their voices filled with sorrow. This power is not meant to be disturbed. But Oliver refused to leave. He knew that as long as the stone existed, the manor's curse would never truly end. Taking a deep breath, Oliver reached for the stone. The moment his hand touched it, a surge of energy coursed through him. He saw flashes of the past, the mirror being forged, the dark magic binding souls, and the lives it had destroyed. The pain was unbearable, but Oliver held on, determined to destroy the stone once and for all. The stone began to crack under Oliver's grip, its pulsating glow dimming. Damning. Destruct delivered in the flesh of the hero. The stone began to crack under Oliver's grip, its pulsating glow dimming. The ghostly figures wailed, their forms dissolving into the mist. But as the stone weakened, Oliver felt his own strength fading. The curse was fighting back, trying to consume him. He thought of Evelyn and the lives that had been lost, drawing courage from their memories. With one final effort, Oliver shattered the stone. The chamber was engulfed in light, and the shadows vanished. The curse was broken. But Oliver collapsed to the ground, drained of energy. The silence that followed was peaceful yet heavy, as if the manor itself was finally at rest. When Oliver woke, he was outside the manor, surrounded by concerned villagers. They had seen the light and come to help, finding him unconscious among the ruins. Though weak, Oliver smiled, knowing he had ended the curse once and for all. The manor no longer felt menacing. It was now just an empty shell. Years later, the story of Blackthorn Manor became a legend. Villagers spoke of Oliver's bravery and the mysterious girl named Evelyn. The forest grew lush and vibrant, and the manor slowly crumbled into the earth. But some say on quiet nights you can still hear a soft voice in the wind, whispering a single name: Oliver, Oliver. Years after Oliver's heroic act, the villagers lived peacefully, believing the curse was gone forever. But deep within the forest, strange things began to happen. Hunters reported hearing whispers, and travelers spoke of flickering lights near the ruins of the manor. It was as if the shadows were alive once more. One evening, an elderly woman named Clara, who had long studied the manor's history, called a village meeting. "The curse may not be as dead as we thought," she warned. The mirror's power was strong, but it wasn't alone. Something ancient still lingers in the woods, and it's watching us. Clara began searching through old books and maps, determined to uncover the truth. She found a hidden record of Blackthorn Manor's earliest days. It spoke of an ancient relic buried beneath the manor long before the mirror existed, a relic said to hold the essence of eternal darkness. The mirror had only been a tool to channel its power. Gathering a small group of villagers, Clara decided to investigate. They followed the old tunnels Oliver had discovered years ago, finding themselves in the same mist-filled chamber where the cursed stone had been destroyed. But now, the room pulsed faintly, as if something was awakening. As Clara and the villagers ventured deeper, the mist began to swirl, forming shapes that seemed almost alive. Shadowy figures appeared, their hollow eyes glowing faintly. "You shouldn't have come," one of them whispered, its voice cold and distant. "The darkness never truly leaves. It only sleeps." The villagers tried to retreat, but the shadows closed in, forcing them further into the chamber. At the center of the room, Clara saw something glowing faintly beneath the dirt. It was a small black crystal, no larger than a coin. She realized this was the relic mentioned in the records, a fragment of the ancient power that had cursed the manor. Clara hesitated before reaching for the crystal. The air around it was icy, and her hand tingled as she touched it. The whispers grew louder, filling her mind with dark visions. She saw the mirror's creation, the cursed souls it trapped, and the stone Oliver had destroyed. The relic was the source of it all, feeding the darkness even now. The shadows grew more aggressive, clawing at the villagers. Clara knew they couldn't leave the relic behind, but destroying it might unleash its full power. Gathering her courage, she wrapped the crystal in cloth and motioned for the villagers to follow her out. The shadows hissed, but they didn't pursue them beyond the chamber. Back in the village, Clara studied the relic, searching for a way to destroy it. The record spoke of a sacred flame that could cleanse even the darkest magic. This flame, however, was said to exist far from the village, deep within the mountains. Clara and the villagers knew it would be a dangerous journey, but they had no choice. A small group, led by Clara, set out at dawn. They carried the relic in a sealed box, its whispers barely contained. The journey was treacherous, with steep cliffs and howling winds. But the closer they got to the mountains, the quieter the relic became, as if it feared the sacred flame. After days of travel, Clara and her group reached the ancient altar where the sacred flame burned eternally. The flame was brilliant, glowing with an otherworldly light. Clara hesitated for a moment before placing the relic into the fire. The box burst open, and the crystal screamed, releasing a torrent of dark energy. The flame flared brighter, consuming the relic and the darkness it held. The ground shook, and the sky seemed to brighten as the last traces of the curse vanished. Clara and the villagers watched in silence, knowing they had finally ended the nightmare. As they returned home, the forest around Blackthorn Manor began to bloom, and the whispers were never heard again. The village settled into peace after the destruction of the cursed relic, but Clara couldn't shake the feeling that something still lingered. The ruins of Blackthorn Manor were quiet, no longer haunted by whispers or shadows. Yet Clara knew that true peace was often fragile, and darkness had a way of finding the smallest crack to return. One morning, as she walked through the village, Clara met with Oliver. He had heard about the recent events and wanted to know how the village was faring. He too had questions, unsure if the curse was truly gone or if it would one day resurface. Together they decided to investigate further, just to be sure. That night, Clara had a strange dream. She stood at the edge of the forest looking at the manor, but it was different, darker, more twisted. The trees seemed to reach out toward her, their branches clawing at the sky. The moon above was black, and the wind carried an eerie sound. She saw a figure in the window of the manor, a silhouette of someone familiar yet impossible to recognize. When Clara woke up, her heart raced. She couldn't shake the feeling that her dream was more than just a nightmare. There was something in the manor that she hadn't uncovered, something hidden beneath the layers of time and magic. She told Oliver about the dream, and they decided to return to Blackthorn Manor once more. As Clara and Oliver approached the manor, they felt an unnatural stillness in the air. The wind had stopped, and the trees were silent. There was no sign of the usual wildlife, no rustling leaves or birds singing. The manor loomed in front of them, its broken windows like eyes staring into their souls. They stepped inside cautiously, the floor creaking underfoot. The dust was thick, and the air smelled of decay, but as they walked deeper into the house, they noticed something strange. The faintest outline of a figure standing at the top of the stairs, a pale, almost translucent shape that seemed to flicker in and out of existence. Clara froze. The figure on the stairs looked almost like Evelyn, the girl whose spirit had once warned Oliver, but this was different. This figure wasn't translucent. It was solid, yet eerily silent. "Evelyn?" Clara whispered, but the figure didn't respond. Instead, it slowly turned and walked down the hallway, vanishing around a corner. Oliver grabbed Clara's arm, his face pale. "This doesn't make sense. Evelyn's spirit should have been freed." They followed the figure down the dark hallway, their footsteps echoing in the silence. As they rounded the corner, they found an old, forgotten door. It creaked open, revealing a hidden room filled with dust and cobwebs. Inside the room, they found an old mirror covered in a thick layer of dust. It was unlike any mirror they had seen before. Its frame was ornate, carved with strange symbols. The glass was black as night, reflecting nothing but shadows. Clara reached out to touch it, and as her fingers brushed the surface, a cold wave washed over her. Suddenly, the room seemed to shift. The walls trembled, and the shadows in the corner of the room began to take shape. Evelyn's voice echoed through the room. The mirror was never destroyed. It was only hidden, waiting for the right moment. Clara gasped. The curse had not ended with the destruction of the stone. It had merely been waiting for the right time to return. Clara and Oliver realized that the mirror had been the true source of the curse, not the stone or the relic. It had been dormant for years, but now it was awakening again. Evelyn's voice spoke once more. "You must destroy the mirror once and for all, or the darkness will consume everything." Clara, feeling the weight of Evelyn's words, knew they had to act quickly. But the mirror was powerful, more so than anything they had encountered before. They would need a plan. As Clara examined the room, she found an old book resting on a nearby table. It was filled with spells and incantations, ancient rituals that might hold the key to breaking the mirror's hold. Clara and Oliver began reading the book, searching for a ritual that could destroy the mirror. The text was written in an ancient language, but Clara, with her knowledge of old magic, was able to decipher it. The ritual required the use of sacred herbs, a blessed candle, and the blood of someone who had been touched by the curse. Oliver hesitated. He had been a part of the curse's history, and his blood was tainted by its power. He knew what he had to do. Together they gathered the necessary ingredients and prepared the ritual, their hands shaking with uncertainty. As they performed the ritual, the room grew colder. The shadows in the corners of the room began to writhe and stretch, reaching for them. The mirror's surface rippled like water, and the faint figure of Evelyn appeared within it once more. The Curse Maiden took up her work, and the faint figure of Evelyn appeared within it once more. "You cannot escape," she said softly. "The darkness is eternal." But Clara and Oliver pressed on, reciting the incantation with all their strength. The mirror trembled, the glass cracking, and the shadows screamed. A brilliant light filled the room, and for a moment everything was still. The mirror shattered into 1,000 pieces, its dark power vanishing into the air. The house fell silent. The oppressive weight that had hung over Blackthorn Manor for so long finally lifted. Clara and Oliver stood amidst the ruins of the mirror, breathing heavily but relieved. The curse was finally broken. Outside, the forest seemed alive again, the air fresh and clean. Birds began to sing, and the trees swayed in the breeze. Blackthorn Manor, once a place of darkness and despair, was now just another abandoned building, its mysteries laid to rest. Clara and Oliver returned to the village, their hearts lighter than they had been in years. The village was thriving, free from the shadow of the manor. And while the story of Blackthorn Manor would remain a legend, Clara knew that peace had been restored. As the years passed, the manor slowly crumbled, returning to the earth. But Clara and Oliver would never forget the lessons learned within its walls. Sometimes, darkness waits, patient and silent. But even the deepest shadows can be overcome with courage and a willingness to face the unknown. Years had passed since the destruction of the cursed mirror, and the village had flourished without the lingering threat of darkness. But one quiet evening, Clara noticed a subtle change. The wind, which had once been gentle, now carried a strange chill. The shadows seemed to stretch longer as the sun dipped below the horizon. Clara stood at the edge of the village, looking toward the ruins of Blackthorn Manor. In her heart, she could feel a presence, something that had been dormant for too long. A new mystery was unfolding, but this time, Clara wasn't sure if it was something she wanted to face. One rainy afternoon, a stranger arrived in the village. He was tall and thin, with dark eyes that seemed to pierce through the fog. His name was Elias, and he claimed to be a historian searching for ancient artifacts. When he learned about Blackthorn Manor, his interest grew intensely. Clara, though wary, agreed to meet with him. Over tea, Elias spoke of a lost history, of legends long buried. "There are whispers of another powerful artifact tied to Blackthorn Manor," he said quietly. an artifact that holds the power to control not just shadows, but time itself. Elias presented a journal he had found in an ancient library. The leather-bound book contained notes from past explorers, all warning of the dark powers residing within Blackthorn Manor. But there was one entry that caught Clara's attention. It described a hidden chamber beneath the manor, one that even the original owners had not dared to enter. Clara and Elias decided to return to the manor together. But this time, Clara felt an unease she couldn't explain. As they walked through the fog, the manor seemed to grow larger, its silhouette more imposing than ever. It was as if it was drawing them in, inviting them to uncover its deepest secrets. The ruins of Blackthorn Manor had crumbled over the years, but Clara knew exactly where the hidden chamber lay. They descended into the dark tunnels, the air growing colder with each step. The walls, damp with age, seemed to whisper in a language only the shadows could understand. At the end of the tunnel, they found a massive stone door, covered in ancient symbols. Elias muttered an incantation from the journal, and the door slowly creaked open. Inside, they found an altar, surrounded by strange markings. At the center of the altar was a stone, a black crystal, pulsing with a dark, rhythmic energy. Clara's hand trembled as she reached for the black crystal. It was warm to the touch, and as her fingers brushed it, a sudden wave of visions flooded her mind. She saw the manor in its prime, the mirror glowing with dark power, and figures dressed in shadow, their faces twisted in agony. The visions were overwhelming. Clara pulled her hand away, gasping for air. "It's the crystal," she whispered. "It's the source of everything, the true power of Blackthorn Manor." Elias, who had been silent, stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the stone. "It's been waiting for someone to claim it," he said, his voice hollow. "And now it's calling us." The moment Clara and Elias touched the crystal together, the ground beneath them trembled. A powerful force surged from the stone, and the chamber filled with a blinding light. The shadows that had once plagued the manor began to swirl around them, forming a vortex of darkness. The crystal's power was awakening, more intense than ever before. Clara tried to pull away, but the power of the crystal held her in place. Elias seemed to be absorbed by the energy, his eyes now glowing with the same dark light. "No, Elias, fight it!" Clara screamed, but his expression had changed. It was as if he had become part of the darkness itself. Elias's body began to twist and warp, his form shifting into something unrecognizable. The crystal had taken hold of him completely, corrupting his soul. "You should have never come here," Elias's voice echoed, now distorted and unnatural. "You've released the darkness, and now it will consume you." Clara, heart racing, knew that she had to destroy the crystal before it could claim her too. But as she reached for the stone, she felt the power of the manor pulling at her, trying to trap her in its grip. The shadows reached out, whispering in her ears, urging her to give in. In the midst of the chaos, Clara remembered the lessons of the past, the strength of will, the power of light, and the courage to face the darkness. She drew on everything she had learned from her previous encounters with the manor's curse. She could feel the light within her, growing stronger as the shadows tried to choke it out. With a final desperate cry, Clara forced the crystal from its altar and hurled it into the farthest corner of the room. The moment it hit the ground, the crystal shattered into thousands of pieces, releasing a deafening screech that echoed through the tunnels. The darkness that had consumed the manor began to recede, the chamber falling silent once more. The destruction of the crystal came at a heavy cost. Elias, no longer human, lay motionless in the center of the room. His body was still, but his eyes were dark and empty, lost to the darkness that had overtaken him. Clara, devastated by the loss of her companion, knew there was no coming back from this. The manor's power had been broken, but at a price. As Clara left the hidden chamber, she could feel the weight of the loss on her shoulders. The village, the manor, and the ancient darkness had all taken their toll. But there was still hope. Clara had stopped the curse before it could spread further. Clara returned to the village, carrying the weight of her experience with her. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the village as life continued, untouched by the horrors of the manor. Though she had lost Elias, she knew the curse had finally been broken for good. The ruins of Blackthorn Manor remained a shadow in the distance, its secrets buried once more. Clara had done all she could. The village was free, and the darkness was no longer its master. But Clara knew that some stories would never be forgotten. The memories of Blackthorn Manor would live on, a reminder of the price that was paid to ensure peace. The village was calm once again, but Clara couldn't escape the weight of the events she had lived through. She spent her days walking the peaceful streets, trying to find some semblance of normalcy. But every time she looked toward the ruins of Blackthorn Manor, she felt the echoes of the dark power that had once held sway over everything Clara knew. That the darkness had not truly been destroyed, only sealed away for now. And the winds whispered that some evils were never fully vanquished, and the manor would forever be a part of her history. The peace in the village seemed fragile, as though the shadows were only waiting for the right moment to return. One evening, Clara received an unexpected visitor, a child from the village who had wandered too close to the manor's ruins. In her hand, she clutched something familiar. It was a piece of the shattered mirror. Clara's heart sank as she recognized the cold, dark glass that had caused so much suffering. The child, unaware of its significance, had found it buried among the rubble. Clara took the piece from her gently, fear and uncertainty creeping into her heart. The mirror was not completely destroyed, and it seemed that its power could still reach out, even from the fragments. Clara knew she couldn't ignore this warning. The battle was not over. That is another selection from. Determined to uncover the truth about the mirror's power, Clara sought out the village's oldest historian, an elderly woman named Mrs. White. She had spent her life studying the village's history and the legends surrounding Blackthorn Manor. When Clara showed her the piece of the mirror, Mrs. White's face paled. "There is something you don't know," she whispered. The mirror wasn't the only cursed artifact at Blackthorn Manor. There were others, objects of unimaginable power hidden throughout the estate. The mirror was only the beginning. Clara shuddered at the thought of what else might lie hidden beneath the manor's ruins, waiting to be uncovered. Mrs. White spoke of a secret society that had once lived in Blackthorn Manor, a group who had studied forbidden magic and sought to control the forces of nature itself. They believed that with enough power, they could manipulate time, death, and life itself, Mrs. White said. But the more they sought, the darker the magic became. Eventually, they destroyed themselves. Clara listened intently, trying to piece together the missing parts of the puzzle. It was clear now that the mirror was not just an object. It was a key to a much larger, darker history. And whatever remained of the manor's secrets was far more dangerous than she could have imagined. Determined to stop whatever evil still lurked within Blackthorn Manor, Clara and Mrs. White set out to find the hidden vault mentioned in the ancient texts. It was said to be buried deep beneath the manor, protected by powerful wards and traps. With the piece of the mirror in hand, Clara felt both fear and resolve as she ventured back to the ruins. The journey through the rubble was difficult, the air thick with the weight of history. Clara felt the presence of something watching them, an invisible force that seemed to follow their every move. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the air became, as if the very ground was alive with the dark energy of the manor. At last, Clara and Mrs. White found the entrance to the vault. It was hidden beneath a collapsed staircase, its stone door carved with intricate symbols that seemed to pulse with life. Clara could feel the power of the vault even before they touched it. The air around them shimmered, as though reality itself was bending. Mrs. White pulled out an old rusted key from her bag. "This is the key," she said, holding it up to the door. With a deep breath, Clara watched as she turned the key in the lock. The vault door creaked open, revealing a dark chamber filled with ancient artifacts, many of them covered in dust and cobwebs. But at the center of the room was a pedestal, and upon it a strange object, a dark crystal glowing with a sickly light. Clara stepped closer to the pedestal, her heart pounding in her chest. The crystal seemed to call to her, its glow pulsing with an energy that made her skin crawl. This was the source of the manor's curse, she realized, the true heart of the dark magic that had plagued the village for centuries. Mrs. White stepped forward, her face filled with sorrow. "This is the dark heart, the source of all the evil in Blackthorn Manor. Whoever controls it controls the darkness. But it comes at a terrible cost." Clara knew that if the crystal was allowed to remain here, it would only bring more suffering, but destroying it was not a simple task. It would require a sacrifice. As Clara stared at the crystal, the shadows in the vault seemed to come alive, swirling around her. "You can destroy it," a voice whispered in the darkness, "but at what cost?" Clara's heart raced as the shadows tried to reach out, wrapping around her legs and pulling her toward the pedestal. She could hear Mrs. White's voice calling to her, but it was drowned out by the dark energy surrounding her. The crystal pulsed faster, louder, and Clara felt her very soul being drawn into its darkness. She fought with every ounce of strength she had, but the pull was immense. The power was too much. With a final burst of will, Clara broke free from the grip of the shadows. She turned and faced the crystal, her eyes filled with determination. There was only one way to end the curse once and for all. She had to destroy the heart, even if it meant sacrificing everything she had. But as she reached for the crystal, a voice, familiar and gentle, whispered in her ear, "Don't." It was Elias, his voice clear and kind. Clara's heart broke as she realized the truth. Elias had not truly been lost. His spirit had lingered, watching over her, guiding her toward the right choice. She understood now that the crystal could not be destroyed by force alone. Clara closed her eyes, focusing on the light within her. She remembered the lessons she had learned, the strength she had found in herself and in others. As she reached for the crystal once more, she whispered a prayer, not for destruction, but for healing. The darkness trembled, and for the first time, Clara felt peace. The crystal shattered, not with a violent explosion, but with a gentle glow. The darkness lifted from the vault, leaving Clara and Mrs. White in silence. The curse of Blackthorn Manor was finally broken, and Clara knew that peace had been restored, at least for now. With the curse of Blackthorn Manor finally lifted, Clara stood at the edge of the ruins, feeling an unexpected lightness in her heart. The air was fresh, the oppressive weight that had lingered for so long finally gone. It felt as though the manor itself had exhaled a long-held breath. The village, too, seemed to breathe easier. Though the past would always be a part of Clara, she knew it was time to move forward. This was a time to move forward. The manor, once a place of fear and darkness, was now a symbol of resilience and hope. Clara felt the dawn of a new chapter in her life, free from the shadows that had haunted her for so long. The villagers gathered to thank Clara for her bravery. They had heard the stories of her trials and the dangers she had faced to restore peace. Clara was overwhelmed by their kindness, but she couldn't help but feel that this victory was not hers alone. Elias had been with her every step of the way, guiding her in ways she couldn't explain. The village elders held a ceremony to honor Clara's courage. As they spoke of her heroism, Clara's eyes wandered to the horizon. She realized that the world had changed, and so had she. The adventure was over, but the lessons she had learned would guide her for the rest of her life. A week after the ceremony, Clara was back at her cottage, reflecting on all that had happened. But just as she thought the story was finished, an unexpected visitor arrived. A traveling merchant with a strange item. He handed her a velvet pouch, and inside was the mirror. Clara's heart skipped a beat. How had the mirror returned? She thought it had been destroyed when the dark heart was shattered. The merchant explained that he had found it in the ruins, but something about it felt different. Calmer, less threatening. Clara stared into its depths, noticing that the darkness was no longer there. Clara placed the mirror on her mantle, unsure of what to do with it. She wondered whether it was truly gone, whether the power it once held had finally faded. But when she gazed into the glass, she no longer saw the twisted, malevolent reflections of the past. Instead, the mirror seemed to show peaceful scenes, images of her village, of calm, clear skies, and of herself walking through fields of flowers. For the first time, Clara felt a sense of peace when looking into the mirror. It was no longer an object of fear, but a reminder of her journey. Perhaps, she thought, the mirror could be a tool for healing rather than destruction. As the days passed, Clara began to hear whispers on the wind. The same whispers that had once called to her from the shadows of Blackthorn Manor seemed to follow her now, but they were different. They were soft, gentle whispers that spoke not of danger but of guidance. Clara realized that these whispers were not from the darkness anymore. They were messages of wisdom and understanding, left behind by the spirits of those who had once lived in the manor. Elias's voice, too, seemed to be among them, offering her quiet encouragement. She listened closely, trusting that these whispers were here to help her find her true purpose. One day, while cleaning her cottage, Clara discovered an old letter hidden beneath the floorboards. The letter was yellowed with age, and the ink was faded, but the words were still legible. It was addressed to her, written by Elias. In the letter, Elias explained his role in the events that had unfolded. He spoke of the power of the mirror and the dark forces that had bound him to the manor, but he also spoke of his love for Clara and his hope that she would one day break the curse, not just for the village, but for herself as well. Clara's eyes filled with tears as she read the words. She realized that Elias had always been with her, in spirit, guiding her toward the light. Clara began to understand that the bond she had with Elias was more than just a connection to the past. It was a bond that transcended time and space. She felt his presence with her during quiet moments, as though he was still by her side, offering his protection and love. With this newfound sense of connection, Clara felt stronger than ever. The journey had been long and full of danger, but she had emerged victorious. And now she could truly embrace the peace she had fought so hard to restore. The whispers on the wind grew more frequent, and Clara knew that Elias's spirit was at peace, knowing that she had succeeded in breaking the curse. As time went on, Clara began to feel that the mirror held a deeper meaning than she had initially realized. It was not just a relic of the past, but a symbol of transformation. She decided to share the mirror with the village, placing it in the town hall for everyone to see. The villagers marveled at its beauty, and though they could still sense the power within it, they also saw that it had changed. It was no longer a source of fear, but a reminder of their collective strength and resilience. Clara knew that the mirror was not only a reflection of the past, but a reflection of their shared future. Years passed, and the memory of the dark days of Blackthorn Manor began to fade into legend. Clara became a guardian of the village, guiding its people with wisdom and compassion. She never forgot the lessons she had learned, nor the whispers that had guided her along the way. One evening, as Clara walked through the village, she saw a young child staring curiously at the mirror. The child's eyes sparkled with wonder, and Clara smiled. She knew that the mirror would now belong to the next generation, who would carry the legacy of courage, hope, and healing forward. Clara sat on the porch of her cottage one final evening, watching the sunset over the village. The mirror rested on the mantel, its surface calm and still. The whispers had faded, but Clara knew that the legacy of Blackthorn Manor would never truly be gone. As the stars began to twinkle in the sky, Clara closed her eyes, feeling a deep sense of peace. She had completed her journey. The mirror, once a cursed object, had become a symbol of renewal, and though the past would always be a part of her, Clara knew that the future was full of light, hope, and endless possibilities. One crisp autumn morning, Clara received a visitor from a distant land. The stranger was a woman cloaked in a deep blue robe, her eyes full of curiosity and wonder. She had heard the tales of Blackthorn Manor and its enchanted mirror, and she had come seeking answers. Clara welcomed the visitor into her cottage, intrigued by her presence. The woman explained that she had traveled far, drawn by whispers of an ancient power hidden within the mirror. Clara, though unsure of the stranger's intentions, felt a strange sense of familiarity. There was something about her that felt connected to the manor's past. The woman introduced herself as Lyra, a scholar of ancient artifacts and forgotten histories. She had spent years researching the mirror, and her studies had led her to Clara. Lyra spoke of her ancestors, who had once lived in a distant kingdom that had been similarly cursed by a dark power. Clara listened intently as Lyra described the eerie similarities between her own story and that of her ancestors. It seemed as though the mirror held a deeper connection to the world than Clara had realized. Lyra explained that the mirror was not just a relic of Blackthorn Manor. It was part of a much larger, ancient network of magical artifacts. As Lyra continued her tale, Clara's mind raced. She had always believed that the mirror was a curse, a source of darkness and fear. But Lyra's words revealed a truth that Clara had never considered. The mirror's true purpose was to protect the balance between light and shadow. The mirror was not meant to bring destruction. Rather, it was a guardian of sorts, a keeper of ancient secrets. It had been created by a long-forgotten order of protectors, who had used it to keep the forces of darkness at bay. Over time, the mirror had become corrupted, its power twisted by the evil forces that sought to control it. Clara felt a deep sense of responsibility as Lyra spoke. It was clear now that the mirror was not just a personal burden, but a key to an ancient mystery. Lyra believed that the mirror could still be used to restore balance, but it required a new guardian, someone with the strength and wisdom to wield its power. Clara hesitated, unsure if she was the right person for such a task. But something deep within her heart told her that she had already been chosen. The mirror had called to her once before, and now it seemed to be calling again. This was a new chapter in her journey, one that would lead her into even greater challenges. Lyra and Clara set out together, determined to uncover the true purpose of the mirror and protect it from falling into the wrong hands. Their first stop was an ancient temple hidden deep in the forest, where it was said that the secrets of the mirror were kept. The path was treacherous, and Clara could feel the weight of the mirror in her bag, as though it were calling out to something hidden in the darkness. As they approached the temple, a strange energy filled the air. The temple seemed to pulse with power, and Clara's heart raced. This was the beginning of something much greater than she had ever imagined. The temple was unlike anything Clara had ever seen. Its walls were covered in intricate carvings, and the air inside was thick with the scent of ancient incense. As they ventured deeper into the temple, the darkness seemed to grow heavier, pressing against them. Lyra led the way, her eyes scanning the surroundings for clues. Clara held the mirror tightly, sensing its power growing stronger. The further they went, the more they felt the presence of something ancient and powerful lurking in the shadows. Clara knew they were not alone. At the heart of the temple, they encountered a massive stone door, etched with strange symbols. Lyra stepped forward, muttering an incantation under her breath. The door slowly creaked open, revealing a chamber bathed in a soft, ethereal light. In the center of the room stood a statue, a figure carved from dark stone, with eyes that seemed to follow Clara's every movement. This was the guardian of the temple, a being who had been placed there to protect the ancient secrets within. Lyra explained that only those who were worthy could pass the guardian's test. The guardian's eyes glowed as Clara approached, and a deep voice echoed through the chamber. "Prove your worth, child of the mirror," it boomed. "Show that your heart is pure, and you may uncover the secrets that lie beyond." Clara took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. She had faced many challenges before, but this felt different. The mirror, too, seemed to pulse with anticipation, as though it was waiting for her to make a choice. She closed her eyes and listened to her heart, knowing that the truth could only be found through courage and sincerity. The guardian's voice echoed once again. "Your heart is true, but the choice is yours. Will you use the mirror's power to protect, or will you fall into temptation and seek its power for yourself?" Clara felt the mirror's weight in her hands, its power thrumming in her fingertips. She understood now that the mirror could be a force for great good or terrible evil. It all depended on the heart of the one who wielded it. With a steady hand, Clara placed the mirror on a stone pedestal, symbolizing her choice to protect the balance, no matter the cost. The chamber seemed to shift as Clara made her decision. The guardian's eyes softened, and a sense of calm washed over the room. The dark energy that had once filled the temple now receded, replaced by a gentle warmth. The mirror, too, seemed to change. Its surface shimmered with a soft golden light, and Clara knew that it had accepted her decision. She had passed the test, and in doing so had become the true guardian of the mirror. With the guardian's blessing, Clara and Lyra left the temple, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As Clara and Lyra left the temple, they felt the weight of their mission settle upon them. Clara had become the true guardian of the mirror, and with this new role came immense responsibility. The mirror, now glowing softly in her hands, was more than just an object. It was a symbol of balance between light and darkness. Lyra, ever wise, reminded Clara that their journey was far from over. They had uncovered the secrets of the mirror, but now they had to ensure its power was protected. It would take more than courage to keep the mirror safe. It would take a deep understanding of the ancient forces that sought to control it. With a new sense of determination, Clara and Lyra set out to find the next step in their journey. Lyra spoke of a hidden path that would lead them to the ancient order of protectors, the ones who had created the mirror so many centuries ago. This order held the key to unlocking the full potential of the mirror. The path, however, was not easy to find. It was said to be hidden in plain sight, but only those with the knowledge and the right intentions could see it. Clara, now attuned to the mirror's power, felt the air shift as they walked, and soon the faint outline of a hidden doorway appeared before them. The hidden path led them to a vast underground chamber, known as the Chamber of Echoes. The chamber was filled with ancient artifacts and inscriptions, the remnants of the Protector's long-lost civilization. The walls hummed with energy, and Clara could feel the power of the mirror growing stronger as they entered. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, upon which rested an ancient book. The book was bound in dark leather, its pages yellowed with age. Lyra approached it cautiously, explaining that this was the book of the Protectors, containing the knowledge they would need to unlock the true power of the mirror. Lyra began to decipher the book, but the pages were written in an ancient language that Clara could not understand. As she watched, Clara noticed something strange. The words on the pages seemed to shift and change, as if they were alive. The book presented a riddle, one that Lyra could not solve. It was a test of both wisdom and heart, asking the reader to choose between light and shadow, sacrifice and power. Clara felt a deep connection to the riddle, and she realized that the answer lay within her own heart. The choice was hers to make, and it would define the fate of the mirror. Clara took the book from Lyra's hands, her fingers brushing the ancient pages. As she read the riddle, she felt a surge of energy flow through her. The words became clear, and she understood what she had to do. The mirror's power could be used to protect the world from darkness, but it required great sacrifice. She closed the book and turned to Lyra, her heart heavy with the weight of her decision. Clara knew what she had to do. To protect the mirror and ensure its power was used for good, she would have to give up something precious. She wasn't sure what that sacrifice would be, but she knew it was the only way. As Clara made her decision, the chamber seemed to shift. The energy in the room grew more intense, and the mirror in Clara's hands began to glow brightly. The air around them thickened, and Clara could feel the forces of light and shadow tugging at her. Lyra, sensing Clara's inner struggle, stepped forward. "You are not alone," she said softly. "The power of the mirror lies not in what we gain, but in what we are willing to give up. Only through sacrifice can we protect what truly matters." Clara nodded, understanding the depth of the words. With a final, steady breath, she whispered the incantation from the book, sealing her choice. The mirror's power surged, and a brilliant light filled the room. The light from the mirror dimmed, and Clara felt a deep sense of peace. The mirror's energy had shifted, becoming a force for good once more. But as the power settled, Clara also felt the weight of her decision. The sacrifice she had made had come at a cost. Her connection to the world had been altered. Lyra watched with a knowing gaze, her voice gentle. The burden of the guardian is not one to be taken lightly, but you have done what was necessary to protect the balance. Clara felt a sense of both relief and sorrow. The journey was far from over, but she had done what was right. After the intense events of the past days, Clara and Lyra found a quiet moment to reflect. They sat by a small fire outside the temple, the night air cool and crisp. The stars above twinkled brightly as if watching over them. Clara looked at the mirror, now resting safely by her side. It no longer felt like a burden but a symbol of her strength. She had proven herself worthy of the guardian's role, and the mirror had accepted her. But deep down, Clara knew that the journey was far from complete. There would be more challenges, more tests, and more choices to make. Lyra and Clara knew they couldn't stay in the temple forever. The world was vast, and there were still many dangers lurking in the shadows. As they packed their things, Lyra spoke of a new path, one that would lead them to the heart of the ancient order of protectors. "This is only the beginning," Lyra said, her voice filled with determination. "The mirror's true power has yet to be fully awakened, and you, Clara, are the key to unlocking it. Together, we will continue our journey and protect the balance." Clara nodded, a new sense of purpose filling her heart. She had made her choice, and now she was ready to face whatever came next. As Clara and Lyra set off on their new journey, the road ahead seemed long and uncertain, but Clara was no longer afraid. She knew that she had the strength to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The mirror, now glowing softly, was a reminder of the responsibility she carried. With the first step forward, Clara felt a renewed sense of hope. The power of the mirror was not just in its magic, but in the choices they made along the way. And as the journey continued, Clara knew that she would always protect the balance between light and shadow, no matter the cost. Clara and Lyra continued their journey, the path ahead shrouded in mystery. As they walked deeper into the forest, the trees seemed to close in around them, their branches twisting and bending as if whispering secrets to each other. The air was thick with magic, and Clara could feel the presence of something ancient and powerful. Lyra led the way, her steps confident, yet Clara could sense a growing unease in the air. The forest was alive with more than just wind and leaves. There were hidden forces at work, forces that watched them closely, waiting for the right moment to strike. As they ventured deeper into the woods, a sudden chill swept through the trees, and the mirror in Clara's hands began to hum softly. The sound was faint at first, like a distant echo, but it grew louder with each step. Lyra paused, her eyes scanning the forest. "The guardian's voice," she whispered. "It's calling you." Clara's heart raced. She had heard of this before. There were ancient guardians who protected the land, and their voices could only be heard by those chosen to fulfill the mirror's purpose. The voice grew stronger, guiding them to a small clearing. There, hidden beneath the roots of an ancient tree, they discovered a forgotten temple. The structure was overgrown with vines, its stone steps cracked and worn from years of neglect. "This is it," Lyra said softly, her eyes wide with awe. "The temple of the ancient guardians. This is where you must go to unlock the mirror's true power." Clara felt a surge of energy, knowing this was the moment she had been waiting for. With a deep breath, she stepped toward the temple, ready to face whatever awaited her. Inside the temple, the air was thick with the presence of magic. The walls were covered in ancient runes, and the floor was lined with intricate patterns. In the center of the temple stood a pedestal upon which rested a stone basin. The voice of the guardian echoed once more, urging Clara to place the mirror in the basin. "This is the trial," Lyra explained. "Only when the mirror is immersed in the basin's energy will its true power awaken." Clara stepped forward, her hands trembling as she placed the mirror on the pedestal. The moment the mirror touched the basin, the entire temple shook, and a brilliant light flooded the room. As the light filled the temple, Clara felt the mirror's power surge through her. The energy was overwhelming, filling every corner of her being. She saw flashes of ancient battles, lost civilizations, and the mirror's long and storied history. The voice of the guardian spoke again, this time clearer than ever. "You are the chosen one," it said. "Only you can wield the mirror's power to restore balance." Clara's heart pounded as she absorbed the weight of the words. She had been given the responsibility to protect not just the mirror, but the entire world. The mirror's power was now hers to control, but with the awakening of the mirror's true power came the emergence of a dark force. The air grew colder, and shadows began to creep into the temple. Lyra stepped forward, her face grim. "The darkness is stirring," she said. "It seeks to reclaim the mirror and its power." Clara felt the darkness pressing in on her, but she knew she could not let it take control. She raised the mirror high, its light cutting through the shadows. The darkness recoiled, but it was not gone. The battle for the mirror's control had only just begun. Outside, the sky had darkened, and the winds howled with a fierce intensity. The dark force, an ancient enemy of the Guardians, was rising. Clara and Lyra stood side by side, ready to face whatever came their way. The mirror's power was at its peak, but so too was the darkness. "Hold strong," Lyra urged. "The mirror's power is strongest when you believe in yourself. You are the key to defeating this darkness." Clara took a deep breath, her hands steady as she held the mirror aloft. The battle for balance had begun, and she was ready to fight. The dark force surged forward, its presence like a tidal wave of cold, shadowy energy. Clara could feel its pull, trying to drag her into its depths. The mirror's light flickered, struggling to hold the darkness at bay, but Clara's resolve was unshakable. She focused on the light within her, the strength she had gained through her journey. With a mighty cry, Clara raised the mirror higher, its light flaring bright enough to blind the darkness. The shadow recoiled, but it did not retreat. It was relentless, pressing in from all sides. Clara knew that to defeat it once and for all, she had to make the ultimate sacrifice. Clara's heart ached as she realized the truth. To rid the world of the darkness forever, she would have to give up the mirror's power. The choice was hers alone. She closed her eyes, her mind filled with memories of everything she had fought for, her journey, her friends, and the balance she had sworn to protect. With a final, decisive motion, Clara made the sacrifice. The mirror's light flared brighter than ever, enveloping the darkness and banishing it from the world. The battle was over, but at a great cost. Clara collapsed to her knees, feeling the weight of her decision. When Clara awoke, she was lying outside the temple, the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon. The mirror was gone, its power forever sealed. Lyra stood beside her, a smile on her face. "You did it," she said softly. "The world is safe, and the balance has been restored." Clara's heart swelled with a mixture of relief and sadness. The mirror was no longer in her hands, but its legacy lived on. She had fulfilled her purpose, and now the world would continue without the looming threat of darkness. With a final glance at the temple, Clara and Lyra turned to leave. Their journey had ended, but a new beginning awaited. The world was at peace, and Clara knew that she had made the right choice. The enchanted mirror of Blackthorn Manor had fulfilled its purpose, and so had she. Clara and Lyra made their way back to Blackthorn Manor, the place where it all began. The once eerie mansion now felt peaceful, as if the darkness had truly been vanquished. The air was still, and the mansion seemed to glow with a soft, welcoming light. Clara's heart felt lighter than it had in ages. She had fought hard for this moment, and now it was time to return to a world that was safe. As they approached the front doors, Clara couldn't help but reflect on everything she had experienced, both the terrifying and the triumphant moments that had shaped her journey. Inside the manor, the silence was almost deafening. The grand hall was empty, yet Clara could still feel the presence of the ancient energies that once inhabited this place. Lyra placed her hand on Clara's shoulder, a silent reminder that the journey had ended, but the memories would always remain. "We did it," Clara whispered, her voice filled with awe. "The mirror is gone, and the darkness is defeated, but I can still hear the echo of its presence." Lyra nodded, understanding the depth of Clara's words. The fight may have been won, but the battle had changed them both forever. As they ventured deeper into the manor, Clara noticed something strange. The mirror's pedestal, once empty, now had a faint glow emanating from it. At first, Clara thought her eyes were playing tricks on her, but as she approached, she realized it was not the mirror itself. Something else was there. Something else was there. "It's the Keeper," Lyra explained, her eyes wide with recognition. "The power that once belonged to the mirror is now being passed to someone new. It seems that the mantle of guardian has shifted, and now the next keeper must rise." Clara stood still, unsure of what this meant for her future, but a sense of peace settled over her. The glow from the pedestal continued to grow, and Clara felt an overwhelming sense of purpose wash over her. It was as if the manor itself was calling her to take on a new role, one that she had never expected. The powers of the ancient guardians were now a part of her. "This is your destiny," Lyra said gently, her voice soft but filled with certainty. "You are no longer just a protector of the mirror. You are the protector of balance itself." Clara nodded slowly, realizing that the path ahead was not one she could turn away from. The world was safe, but it needed someone to guard it, and that someone was now her. The pedestal's glow dimmed, but Clara felt the weight of the mirror's legacy still within her. It wasn't gone entirely. It had become a part of her, woven into the very fabric of her being. She now carried the ancient power, a responsibility that could never be taken lightly. "This is just the beginning," Clara thought to herself. "I am the keeper now, and with that comes a duty to protect all that is good in the world." With a final glance at the manor, she knew that her life had changed forever. The mirror was no longer just an object. It was a legacy that would continue through her. Woo! Clara's journey had transformed her into something greater than she had ever imagined. But as she stood at the heart of Blackthorn Manor, she realized that her role was not one she would have to bear alone. The guardians who had watched over the manor for centuries had awakened, drawn to her power. "They are here," Lyra said with a knowing smile. "The new guardians. They will assist you in keeping the balance." Clara could see their faint forms materializing around her, their eyes filled with wisdom. Each one had a unique energy, a different gift to offer. Together, they would ensure that the balance of the world remained intact. As Clara embraced her new role, she noticed an object on the ground near the pedestal. A small stone, glowing with the same energy that had filled the temple. Lyra bent down to pick it up, her eyes studying it closely. "This is the enchanted stone," Lyra explained. "It is a key to unlocking the deeper powers of the mirror. It will guide you when the time is right." Clara took the stone in her hand, feeling its warmth and power course through her. She knew that this stone was a symbol of her new responsibility, and it would be her guide in times of uncertainty. The days that followed were filled with a quiet, almost serene energy. Blackthorn Manor no longer felt oppressive. Instead, it felt like a place of peace, where the balance between light and dark had been restored. Clara spent her days meditating, learning from the new guardians and understanding her powers. But even in the quiet moments, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to learn, something deeper hidden within the manor's walls. She would have to remain vigilant, for her journey was not over. The mirror's legacy was hers to protect, and she would do so with all her heart. As Clara embraced her new role, she noticed an object on the ground near the pedestal. A small stone, glowing with the same energy that had filled the temple. Lyra bent down to pick it up, her eyes studying it closely. "This is the enchanted stone," Lyra explained. "It is a key to unlocking the deeper powers of the mirror. It will guide you when the time is right." Clara took the stone in her hand, feeling its warmth and power course through her. She knew that this stone was a symbol of her new responsibility, and it would be her guide in times of uncertainty. The days that followed were filled with a quiet, almost serene energy. Blackthorn Manor no longer felt oppressive. Instead, it felt like a place of peace, where the balance between light and dark had been restored. Clara spent her days meditating, learning from the new guardians and understanding her powers. But even in the quiet moments, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to learn, something deeper hidden within the manor's walls. She would have to remain vigilant, for her journey was not over. The mirror's legacy was hers to protect, and she would do so with all her heart. One evening, as Clara meditated in the garden, a sudden disturbance shook the air. The ground trembled beneath her feet, and the wind howled like a distant storm. The dark force, though banished, was never truly gone. It had found a way to return, seeking to reclaim what it had lost. Clara stood up, her heart pounding. The guardians gathered around her, their eyes filled with concern. "It has returned," Lyra said grimly. "You must stop it once and for all." Clara nodded, her determination stronger than ever. This time, she would not allow the darkness to win. The dark force materialized before Clara, its shadowy form more powerful than ever. It roared, a guttural sound that echoed through the manor. Clara raised the enchanted stone high, its glow brightening the darkened sky. The guardian stood ready, but Clara knew this battle was hers to fight. With a cry of strength, Clara unleashed the full force of her powers. The light from the enchanted stone merged with the energy of the manor, creating a blinding flash that consumed the darkness. The shadow screeched as it dissolved into nothingness, vanquished once and for all. The battle was over, and Clara stood victorious. The balance was restored, and the world was safe. But Clara knew that she would always remain the keeper, guarding the legacy of the mirror and the peace she had fought so hard to achieve. After the darkness was banished, Clara felt a sense of peace she had never known before. The manor, once a place of fear and sorrow, now seemed to breathe with new life. The gardens bloomed in colors Clara had never seen, and the air was filled with the sweet scent of new beginnings. She spent her days walking through the manor, letting the serenity wash over her. The power she had gained from the mirror was still within her, but now it felt calm, controlled. Clara knew that it wasn't just her powers that had changed. The entire manor had shifted, becoming a sanctuary for those who sought peace. One afternoon, as Clara explored a part of the manor she had never ventured into before, she discovered a hidden door behind an old tapestry. The door creaked open, revealing a dusty, forgotten room. The room was filled with books and ancient artifacts, and at its center stood a tall, elegant mirror, unlike any she had ever seen. This mirror, unlike the one she had destroyed, had no dark power. Instead, it glowed with a soft, welcoming light. Clara knew that this was another relic from the manor's past. She felt an instant connection to it, as if it held the key to her next chapter. Clara sat before the mirror, studying it closely. Unlike the enchanted mirror that had caused so much chaos, this one seemed calm and wise. As she gazed into it, the reflection before her shifted. The image was not her own, but a vision of a distant past, a time before the mirror had been hidden away. The vision showed an ancient keeper, a guardian like herself, standing before this very mirror. Clara realized that the keeper's role was always to guard the mirror's power, ensuring that it never fell into the wrong hands. She understood then that the power of the manor was not just about protecting, it was about learning, growing, and passing on the legacy. That evening, as Clara meditated in the room with the mirror, a shadow appeared in the doorway. It was Lyra, her face serious. "I've sensed a disturbance," she said. "There is something you need to know about the mirror's power." Clara turned to her, her heart racing. "What is it? What is happening?" Lyra stepped closer, her voice lowering. "The mirror's power is tied to the past. There is one more part of its legacy that must be unlocked. Only the keeper can do this, but it will not be easy." Clara felt a deep sense of responsibility settle in her chest. "I'm ready," she said, determined to face whatever came next. Lyra led Clara to a hidden passage deep within the manor, one that Clara had never noticed before. The walls were lined with strange symbols, and the air grew colder as they ventured deeper. At the end of the passage stood a heavy stone door, engraved with intricate runes. "This is the hidden chamber," Lyra explained. "Inside lies the final piece of the mirror's legacy. Only the true keeper can unlock it." Clara approached the door, placing her hand on the stone. It felt warm beneath her touch, and the door slowly creaked open. Inside, the room was bathed in a soft golden light, and at its center was a pedestal, holding an ancient scroll. Clara approached the pedestal, her heart pounding with anticipation. The scroll before her was tied with a ribbon, its edges worn with age. As she untied the ribbon and unrolled the scroll, she read the ancient words written in a language she barely understood. But as her fingers traced the symbols, they began to glow with a familiar warmth. The words revealed the true purpose of the keeper, not only to protect the manor, but to keep the balance between the realms of light and shadow. Clara understood now that her role was to prevent the darkness from ever returning, not just in the manor, but throughout the world. The weight of her responsibility felt immense, but Clara knew she was ready. With the scroll in her hands, Clara felt a surge of power unlike anything she had ever experienced. The room around her seemed to shimmer with light, and the very air crackled with energy. The guardian spirits appeared once more, surrounding her in a protective circle. "This is the full extent of your power," Lyra said, her voice filled with awe. You are not just the keeper of the manor, you are the keeper of balance itself." Clara nodded, understanding that her powers were no longer just about defense. They were about maintaining harmony in the world. With this power came great responsibility, but Clara felt a sense of purpose she had never known before. Though the darkness had been defeated, Clara could still feel its lingering presence. It was as if the very air around her was thick with unspoken threats. The Guardians had warned her that the balance she now protected was fragile, and there would always be forces seeking to tip it. Clara's thoughts were interrupted by a low growl echoing from the shadows. It was faint at first, but soon it grew louder, more threatening. The dark forces had found a way to return, but this time Clara was prepared. She stepped forward, her hands glowing with the energy of the mirror, ready to face whatever came her way. As night fell over Blackthorn Manor, Clara stood at the highest tower, gazing out over the land. The darkness had gathered again, a swirling mass of shadow that seemed to stretch endlessly across the horizon. It was coming closer, and Clara knew she couldn't face it alone. The Guardians assembled around her, their spirits glowing faintly in the dark. "We will fight with you," Lyra said, her voice firm. "Together we will protect this world from the shadows that seek to destroy it." Clara nodded, her resolve unwavering. She had faced darkness before, and she would do so again. This time, though, she would not just be protecting the manor, she would be protecting the world. The shadowy mass loomed closer, its presence growing stronger with each passing moment. Clara stood ready, the enchanted stone in her hand, glowing with an intense light. The Guardians surrounded her, their powers combining into a protective barrier. As the darkness closed in, Clara raised her hands, summoning the full force of the manor's power. A brilliant light erupted from her, crashing into the darkness with a force that shook the very foundations of the manor. The battle was fierce, but Clara fought with everything she had. Finally, with one last, powerful surge, the darkness shattered, vanquished once and for all. Clara collapsed to her knees, exhausted but victorious. The world was safe, and the balance had been restored. The legacy of the mirror was hers to keep, and Clara knew that she would continue to guard it for as long as it took. Knowing that, in the end, light would always triumph over darkness. The battle had been long and fierce, but the manor was finally at peace. The shadows that had once haunted it were gone, and Clara could feel the calmness settling over Blackthorn Manor. The gardens bloomed brighter than ever, and the rooms, once filled with darkness, now seemed to glow with warmth and light. Clara stood at the heart of the manor, reflecting on everything that had happened. She had faced so much fear and uncertainty, but now she understood that her strength had always come from within. The mirror, the Guardians, and the legacy had all been part of her journey, but it was her heart that had truly guided her through the darkness. She dreaded going back. As the sun rose over the manor, Clara felt a new sense of hope fill her heart. The sky was painted with soft pinks and oranges, and the morning light seemed to wash away any lingering shadows. For the first time in a long while, Clara allowed herself to relax and take in the beauty around her. She had spent so much time protecting the manor and the world from dark forces, but now it was time for her to enjoy the peace she had fought so hard for. Clara knew that her journey wasn't over, but it had entered a new chapter, one where she could live with balance and peace. And the days passed slowly, in the tranquility that had settled over Blackthorn Manor. Clara continued to study the ancient texts she had discovered in the hidden chamber. Learning more about the role of the Keeper, she understood that, while the darkness had been defeated, her duty as the protector of the mirror and the balance would never end. But for now, Clara enjoyed the quiet moments. She spent her time walking through the gardens, listening to the songs of the birds, and watching the stars twinkle in the night sky. She had always known that her life would be one of great responsibility, but she also understood the importance of rest and reflection. One day, as Clara sat in the library, a faint voice echoed through the manor. It was a voice she had not heard in many years. "Clara," it called softly, "it is time to remember what you have forgotten." Startled, Clara stood up and turned around. Before her stood the ancient Keeper, the one she had seen in the mirror's visions. The Keeper's presence was calm, yet powerful. "You have unlocked the secrets of the mirror," the Keeper said. "But there is more to the story. The knowledge you seek is not just about the power of the mirror. It is about the power within you." Clara listened closely as the Keeper spoke, sharing with her the deeper truths of the mirror's magic and her own potential. As the Keeper's words sank in, Clara realized that her powers were not just about protection. They were about creation, about shaping the future. The Keeper's voice grew quieter as they spoke of an ancient prophecy, one that had been hidden for centuries. "There will come a time," the Keeper explained, "when the Keeper's role will evolve. The mirror will no longer be a tool of protection, but will become a source of creation, bringing forth new life and possibilities." Clara's mind raced as she tried to understand what this meant. The prophecy spoke of a future where the mirror's magic would change, becoming a force that could shape not only the world around them, but the very fabric of existence itself. Clara understood that her journey was not over. It had only just begun. With the Keeper's words echoing in her mind, Clara felt a sense of urgency. There was so much more she needed to learn about the mirror, its magic, and the prophecy that would shape the future. She spent countless hours in the hidden chamber, studying the ancient scrolls and deciphering their cryptic messages. Each day, Clara discovered something new, a piece of the puzzle that would lead her to a greater understanding of her purpose. She knew that in time, she would be ready to fulfill the prophecy, but for now, she had to continue her studies. The future depended on it. As Clara immersed herself in her studies, the winds outside the manor began to pick up. A storm was coming, but it was not one of nature's making. There was an energy in the air, a sense of anticipation that made the hairs on Clara's neck stand on end. The guardians appeared around her, their ethereal forms shimmering with power. "Clara," Lyra said, her voice serious, "the prophecy speaks of a time when the storm will rise, when darkness and light will clash. The mirror will play a role in that battle." Clara's heart raced. She knew that the calm she had fought so hard for was now being threatened by something greater, something unknown. Clara knew that she could not face this new challenge alone. She called upon the guardians for guidance, but she also sought out others who could help her. The realm of light was vast, and she needed allies from beyond the manor's walls. One by one, beings from different corners of the world arrived, drawn to Clara's cause. There were mages, healers, warriors, and seers, all united by a common purpose: to protect the balance and ensure the prophecy did not come to pass. Together, they formed a powerful alliance, ready to face whatever lay ahead. As the storm outside grew more intense, Clara returned to the hidden chamber to check on the mirror. The mirror's surface had begun to shimmer with an otherworldly light, a sign that the prophecy was beginning to unfold. Clara placed her hands on the mirror's surface, and as she did, the room seemed to shift around her. She could feel the mirror's power, more potent than ever before, coursing through her. It was no longer just a tool for protection. It was a force that could reshape the world. Clara knew that she would have to use it wisely, for the choices she made now would have consequences far beyond her understanding. The night of the storm arrived, and Clara stood at the edge of the manor, watching the skies darken. The wind howled, and the ground trembled beneath her feet. She could feel the clash of forces building, a battle between light and darkness that would determine the future of the world. With the mirror in her hands, Clara prepared for what was to come. She knew that this would be the ultimate test of her strength and her resolve. The storm was not just a force of nature, it was a reflection of the battle within herself. And as the storm unleashed its fury, Clara braced herself for the fight of her life. As the storm intensified, Clara stood firm, her heart racing but her mind clear. And the mirror glowed with a power unlike anything she had ever felt before, as if it was alive, pulsing with energy. She knew that the storm was not just a battle between light and dark. It was a test of her very essence. The wind howled around her, but Clara focused on the mirror, sensing the presence of an ancient force rising from within. It was as if the storm itself was speaking to her, warning her of the trials she would face. The air crackled with anticipation, and Clara could feel the weight of her destiny pressing down on her shoulders. Suddenly, a shadow moved within the storm, swirling around the manor like a dark cloud. Clara's eyes widened as she saw the figure emerge from the darkness. It was a creature unlike any she had ever encountered. Tall, imposing, with eyes that glowed like fiery embers. It spoke in a low, ominous voice. "You cannot escape what is coming, Clara. The prophecy is inevitable. You cannot hide from your fate." Clara took a deep breath, her hands tightening around the mirror. She wasn't afraid. She had faced worse, and she would face this shadow too. "I will not let you win," Clara declared, her voice steady. The shadow's form shifted and morphed, becoming a swirling mass of darkness that threatened to engulf everything in its path. Clara held the mirror out in front of her, and for the first time she felt its full power respond to her will. Light erupted from the mirror, pushing back against the darkness, but the shadow was relentless, its form ever shifting, attempting to break through the barrier of light. Clara knew that this was no ordinary enemy. It was a manifestation of the very darkness that had plagued Blackthorn Manor for centuries. She needed to find its weakness, and quickly. As the battle raged on, Clara felt a shift within the mirror. It began to glow brighter, revealing ancient symbols and inscriptions that had remained hidden for centuries. Clara's eyes widened as she deciphered the symbols. This was the key to defeating the shadow. The mirror was more than just a tool of protection. It was a gateway to an even greater power, one that could not only repel darkness, but also purify it. Clara focused her energy on the mirror, calling upon its full strength. She could feel the warmth of its power filling her, and with it, the confidence she needed to face the shadow. Clara closed her eyes and concentrated on the mirror's energy. The light that radiated from it grew stronger, shining brighter than anything she had ever seen before. The shadow recoiled, its form flickering as if it were being burned by the light. Clara's grip tightened, and she raised the mirror higher, channeling all of her strength into the light. With a blinding flash, the shadow screamed in agony, its form dissolving into nothingness. The storm that had raged around the manor began to calm, the winds dying down, and the dark clouds breaking apart. Clara lowered the mirror, her breath coming in quick gasps. The first battle was over, but she knew it was only the beginning. As the storm subsided, Clara walked through the now quiet manor, reflecting on the battle she had just fought. The manor was still standing, but the air felt different, heavier, as if something new had entered it. Clara couldn't shake the feeling that the storm had been only a glimpse of the true challenge that lay ahead. She stood in front of the mirror, gazing at her reflection. The woman who stared back at her was different, stronger, more confident. The trials she had faced had changed her, and she knew that the journey was far from over. But for now, she allowed herself a brief moment of peace, knowing that she had overcome the first of many challenges. In the days that followed, Clara gathered the guardians once more, knowing that the storm had only been the beginning. The balance between light and darkness had shifted, and now more forces were beginning to stir. As she sat with Lyra, Bale, and the others, they discussed their next steps. "The prophecy is clear," Lyra said, her voice grave. "There are more challenges to come. The storm was merely a precursor. Dark forces are gathering, and they will test everything you've learned, Clara." Clara nodded, her determination rising. She had already faced the shadows once. She would face them again. Clara knew that she had to prepare for whatever was coming next. With the guardians at her side, she returned to the hidden chamber, where the ancient scrolls still held secrets that had yet to be revealed. As she pored over them, one passage stood out. A warning of an even greater darkness that would rise from the depths of the earth. She rushed to the manor's courtyard, where the guardians were already gathering. "It's happening," Clara said. "The earth is awakening." As the ground cracked open before them, a dark figure rose from the depths, its eyes glowing with malevolent energy. This was the true enemy, a force that would stop at nothing to take control of the mirror. Clara stood facing the creature, her heart pounding in her chest. The earth itself seemed to bend and twist around the dark figure as it moved closer. It was unlike anything Clara had ever seen. A being made of pure darkness, its form shifting like liquid shadow. "This is it," Clara whispered to herself. "The true trial begins now." She closed the scroll and stood up, feeling the weight of what lay ahead. The storm had been only the first step. The real test of her strength was just beginning. A tremor shook the ground beneath Blackthorn Manor, followed by a deep rumble that seemed to come from the very heart of the earth. Clara's heart skipped a beat as she felt the ground shift beneath her feet. The prophecy had warned her of an awakening, and now she could feel it. An ancient force rising from the earth, hungry for power. "Clara, the time has come," the creature's voice boomed, sending chills down Clara's spine. "The mirror belongs to me." Clara raised the mirror, its light flashing brighter than ever before. "No," she replied firmly. "The mirror is mine to protect, and I will not let you take it." The final confrontation had begun, and Clara knew that this battle would determine the fate of the world. The creature, towering over Clara, began to shape itself into a more defined figure. Its eyes burned with an ancient hatred. Clara's heart raced as she could feel the immense power radiating from the creature. "I am the Dark King," it hissed, its voice echoing through the night. "And I have come to claim what is rightfully mine." Clara took a deep breath, steadying her nerves. She had come too far to let this force take the mirror. "You will never have it," she declared, her voice unwavering. The mirror in her hands pulsed with light, answering her challenge. But the Dark King only laughed, as though her words were nothing but a fleeting breeze. With a sharp cry, the Dark King stretched out his hand, sending waves of shadow toward Clara. The very air seemed to freeze as the shadows closed in on her. But Clara raised the mirror higher, its light flaring in response. The darkness recoiled, but it was relentless. Charging forward with greater force, Clara knew she had to be quicker, more decisive. She chanted the ancient words that Lyra had taught her, words that carried the essence of light itself. The mirror's glow intensified, pushing back the shadows, but the Dark King wasn't done yet. He gathered more darkness, wrapping the air around them like a thick, suffocating cloud. As the battle raged on, Clara's strength began to wane. The Dark King's shadows were too much, and she could feel the weight of the mirror growing heavier in her hands. "You are weak," the Dark King mocked. "You cannot win." But just as Clara felt herself faltering, a warm sensation filled her chest. She closed her eyes and remembered the countless battles she had already won. This mirror wasn't just a tool, it was a part of her. A surge of energy coursed through her, and the light from the mirror grew even brighter, creating a protective shield around her. She could feel the hidden power within her, the power of the guardians, of her ancestors, and of the light itself. It was time to end this. Clara, now filled with newfound strength, took a step forward. With a mighty cry, she hurled the mirror toward the Dark King, sending a beam of pure light straight at him. The light collided with his darkness, and for the first time, the Dark King faltered. "You think you can defeat me?" The Dark King howled, his form flickering. "I am eternal!" But Clara's resolve did not waver. She reached for the mirror, guiding it with her will. The light intensified, blasting through the darkness like a sword. The shadows screamed as the light consumed them, piece by piece. The Dark King began to lose his form, his power slipping away with every passing moment. Clara could see him struggle, his body writhing as if the light were burning him from the inside out. She knew that now was the time. With all her strength, Clara focused the light into one final, powerful strike. The beam of light shot forth, piercing through the Dark King's heart. There was a deafening roar as the shadow shattered, disintegrating into nothingness. The storm that had surrounded Blackthorn Manor finally ceased, and the manor stood still in the aftermath of the battle. The silence that followed the destruction of the Dark King was deafening. Clara stood there, her breath coming in short gasps as she looked around. The shadows had lifted, and the moonlight bathed the manor in a peaceful glow. It was over. The guardians gathered around her, their faces reflecting relief and admiration. Lyra stepped forward, placing a hand on Clara's shoulder. "You did it," she said softly. "You defeated him." Clara nodded, her heart still racing. The battle was over, but she knew that the world would never be the same. As dawn broke over Blackthorn Manor, the light seemed brighter, the air fresher. The world felt renewed, and Clara could sense that the balance had been restored. The mirror, now glowing softly in her hands, had fulfilled its purpose. Clara looked up at the sky, feeling the weight of what had just transpired. The guardians began to disperse, returning to their own homes and duties. Lyra stayed behind, watching Clara with a knowing smile. "You have changed, Clara," she said. "You're no longer the girl who stumbled into this manor. You are its protector now, and you've earned that title." Clara smiled, knowing that she had come a long way since that fateful night. Clara walked through the halls of Blackthorn Manor, now quiet and serene. The mirror had been restored to its rightful place, and its light no longer threatened to consume the world. It was a symbol of hope. The manor was no longer a place of fear. It was a place of hope, of light, and of legacy. Clara stood before the mirror once more, gazing at her reflection. The young woman who stared back at her was no longer just a protector. She was a beacon of light, carrying with her the strength of those who had come before. With the mirror now a part of her life, Clara knew that she would continue to protect the manor, the world, and everything in it. Her journey was far from over, but she was ready to face whatever came her way. As long as she had the light, she knew she would never be alone. As days passed, Clara felt an unfamiliar pull toward the mirror. It wasn't just a reflection of herself anymore. It was alive, pulsating with a force she couldn't quite understand. She would often stand before it, lost in its depths, sensing the presence of something ancient. The mirror seemed to whisper to her, urging her to uncover its deeper secrets. One evening, as Clara gazed into the mirror, it began to glow brighter than ever before. She reached out, her fingers brushing the surface, and the mirror shuddered under her touch. In that moment, she knew that there was more to its power than she had realized. It was calling her to a new purpose. The glow from the mirror grew intense, casting long shadows around the manor. Clara stepped closer, feeling her heart beat faster with anticipation. Suddenly, a crack appeared on the surface of the mirror, and from it, a path began to form, a glowing trail that led into the unknown. Clara took a deep breath and followed the path, feeling a mix of excitement and fear. She had no idea where it would lead, but she knew she had no choice but to follow. The mirror was guiding her to something that could change everything. The path led Clara through the dark halls of the manor, and as she walked, the air grew colder. It felt as though time itself was stretching, bending. She reached a hidden room, one she had never seen before, despite knowing every corner of Blackthorn Manor. At the center of the room was a glowing portal, framed by the mirror's light. Clara stepped forward, feeling an overwhelming urge to cross. Without hesitation, she walked through the portal, and everything around her changed in an instant. The manor disappeared, and she found herself standing in an ancient forest, bathed in a soft silver light. It was both beautiful and eerie, as though the world itself was holding its breath. As Clara stood in awe, the trees around her began to stir, and a soft whisper reached her ears. She turned to see figures emerging from the shadows, creatures made of light and forest magic, their eyes glowing with ancient wisdom. They were the guardians of the forest, protectors of a realm long forgotten. One of the guardians stepped forward, their form shimmering with energy. "You have been chosen," they said, in a voice that sounded like a chorus of many. "The mirror has brought you here for a reason. The balance of light and shadow is at stake, and you are the one who can restore it." Clara's heart raced as she realized the enormity of her task. The guardian began to explain the ancient prophecy, the tale of a dark realm hidden deep within the earth, where the shadows had gathered, growing stronger over time. The mirror had been created to hold the balance, but it was now weakening. If the dark realm broke free, it would consume the world in endless night. Clarisse listened carefully, realizing that the battle she had fought was only the beginning. The Dark King was not the ultimate threat. There was something far more dangerous waiting to rise, and it was her responsibility to stop it. She felt a surge of determination. This was a mission she could not fail. The guardians surrounded Clara, their hands raised in unison. A soft, ethereal light flowed from them, surrounding Clara in a protective aura. "You will need more than strength," the guardian said. "You will need the ancient magic of the forest, a power that has been hidden for centuries. With it, you will be able to face the coming darkness." Clara felt the magic seep into her, filling her with warmth and strength. She could sense the ancient power coursing through her veins, and for the first time, she truly understood the role she was meant to play. The mirror had led her here for a reason, and she would not fail. The guardians guided Clara deeper into the forest, where the trees grew taller and the air thicker with magic. At the center of the forest was an ancient tree, its bark dark and twisted, its roots burrowing deep into the earth. This was the heart of the forest, the source of all the magic that protected the realm. The guardian spoke again. "Here, you must unlock the final key. Only when you understand the true nature of the mirror can you wield its power to defeat the coming darkness." Clara approached the tree, feeling a sense of reverence and awe. She placed her hands on the bark, and as she did, a surge of energy rushed through her, revealing the mirror's true purpose. The vision Clara saw was overwhelming. She saw the mirror's creation, its bond with the forest, and the ancient beings who had forged it to protect the balance between light and shadow. The mirror was not just a weapon, it was a bridge between realms, a conduit of power that could either restore harmony or plunge the world into eternal darkness. Clara's mind reeled as she realized what she must do. She had been chosen not just to protect the manor, but to guard the fragile balance that held the world together. The path ahead would not be easy, but Clara was no longer the unsure girl who had first entered Blackthorn Manor. She was ready. The guardian spoke of the coming darkness, a force so powerful that even the most ancient beings feared it. It was not a single creature, but an entire realm filled with shadow and chaos, seeking to invade the light. Clara knew that she was the only one who could stop it. The mirror would be her weapon, but it would require all of her strength and knowledge to wield it. As the guardians faded into the mist, Clara felt a heavy burden fall upon her. The world was depending on her, and there was no turning back. She had to face the darkness head-on, armed with the mirror and the ancient magic of the forest. Clara stood before the mirror one last time, ready to face the ultimate challenge. The forest had given her all it could, and now it was up to her to finish what had been started so many centuries ago. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, feeling the magic of the forest swirling around her. The mirror shone with a blinding light as Clara stepped forward. She could feel the power within her, the strength of the guardians, and the weight of the prophecy. This was her final test. The darkness would come, but she would be ready. The balance of the world rested in her hands, and Clara was determined to protect it, no matter the cost. Clara stepped closer to the mirror, feeling its power pulse beneath her fingertips. The image within began to shift, showing her scenes from the past. Moments of darkness and light, battles fought and won, and the history of the manor itself. It was as if the mirror was telling her its own story, revealing secrets long buried. As she gazed deeper into the reflection, Clara realized that the mirror was not just a magical artifact. It was a living witness to all that had transpired in the manor and beyond. The shadows of the past whispered to her, urging her to uncover the truth that had been hidden for centuries. Suddenly, the peaceful reflection of the past was interrupted by a dark shadow that appeared within the mirror. It moved with a menacing grace, its form shifting and twisting as it seemed to reach out toward Clara. She froze, her heart pounding in her chest. The shadow's eyes glowed a deep, unnatural red, and Clara knew without a doubt that it was the Dark King, or perhaps something worse. "You are not ready," the shadow hissed, its voice like a cold wind. "The darkness will consume you, just as it did before. You cannot stop what is already set in motion." Clara's breath caught in her throat, but she refused to back down. The mirror was offering her the chance to fight, and she would not let fear dictate her actions. Deep within the heart of the forest, Clara found herself standing before the ancient tree once more. Its dark bark seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly glow, and Clara could sense that the tree held the final key to her quest. The guardians had spoken of unlocking its secret, but they had never explained how Clara placed her hands upon the tree's trunk, feeling its magic surge through her. She closed her eyes and focused, reaching deep within herself. The ancient power flowed into her, and the tree's secret was revealed. She saw the final piece of the prophecy, a vision of the mirror's true nature and the role she had to play in the coming battle. It was both a gift and a curse. Clara turned away from the mirror, shaken by the shadow's warning. The guardians had told her of the danger, but seeing it in the mirror made it feel all too real. She needed to prepare, but she had no idea where to start. The forest was her only hope, and she knew she had to return there to seek further guidance. As she left the manor behind, the trees of the forest whispered to her, their voices a calming balm to her troubled mind. The magic of the forest was still with her, and she could feel its power urging her forward. The guardians had shown her the path, but now it was up to her to walk it. The vision faded, and Clara was left with a single glowing key in her hand. The key was unlike any she had ever seen, forged from a material that seemed to shimmer between light and shadow. The guardians had told her that this was the key to unlocking the full potential of the mirror. Without it, she would be unable to harness its true power. Clara knew that her next step was clear. She had to return to the manor and confront the mirror once more. With the key in her hand, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The darkness was coming, but she would not let it consume her or the world she had vowed to protect. Clara made her way back to Blackthorn Manor, the weight of the key heavy in her pocket. The forest had given her the strength she needed, but she knew that the final test awaited her at the manor. The mirror was no longer just a reflection of the past. It was a gateway to the future, and only by unlocking its true power could she hope to defeat the darkness. As she crossed the threshold of the manor, Clara felt a strange sense of foreboding. Why Baron had approached her with the manor. Clara felt a strange sense of foreboding. The air inside was thick with tension, as if the very walls were holding their breath. She could feel the mirror calling to her, its power growing stronger with every passing moment. It was time. Clara approached the mirror once more, the ancient key clenched tightly in her hand. She could feel the mirror's energy swirling around her, and she knew that the time had come to unlock its true potential. With a steady hand, she placed the key into the mirror's surface, and the entire room seemed to tremble. The mirror shimmered, and for a moment, Clara thought she saw a flash of something dark and terrifying lurking behind the glass. But then, as the key turned, the mirror's surface rippled like water, and the reflection changed. The darkness that had once seemed so overwhelming now appeared smaller, more contained, as if the mirror was sealing it away. Clara stepped back, breathing heavily as she watched the mirror's transformation. The power within it was unlike anything she had ever felt before. It was both comforting and terrifying at the same time, a force that could both protect and destroy. She knew that the final battle was drawing near. The mirror had given her the strength to face the darkness, but Clara understood that the true test was still ahead. Lily. The battle between light and shadow would be fought not just with magic, but with willpower and determination. She was ready. But there was one last thing she needed to do. As Clara stood before the mirror, she was faced with an overwhelming choice. The mirror could give her unimaginable power, but at a cost. It would take everything she had, her strength, her will, her very soul. If she chose to wield its power, there would be no turning back. The darkness would be defeated, but she might never be the same again. Clara closed her eyes and thought of everything she had fought for: the manor, the forest, the guardians, and the people she loved. This was her destiny, and she would not run from it. She reached out and placed her hand on the mirror's surface once more. The choice was made. With Clara's final choice, the mirror began to glow brighter than ever before. The darkness that had once threatened to consume the world seemed to shrink, pushed back by the sheer force of her will. The power of the mirror flowed through her, filling her with an energy she had never known. She could feel the weight of it, but she was not afraid. The battle was not over, but Clara was ready. She had unlocked the mirror's true power, and now it was time to face the darkness once and for all. The final showdown was on the horizon, and Clara knew that she had the strength to see it through. Thank you for joining us on tonight's peaceful journey here at Stories for Sleep. We hope this story helped calm your mind and lead you closer to a night of restful dreams. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more soothing tales. And remember, the magic of sleep is just a story away. Hit the bell icon so you never miss a moment of relaxation with us. Sweet dreams, and we'll see you in the next one.